point.
At some point. I mean, his backstory.
His backstory comes out of left field, I swear.
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast, with your hosts, Connor O'Neill and Matthew Hughes.
What is up, everybody? Hey, Matt. Welcome back to another episode of the Nerdy Misfit Podcast.
Hello, and welcome.
Got our longest running series.
Longest running series. We say that every time.
Anime of the month. Happens every month. I know, it's
crazy. Happy end of the May. We're already this year's flying by.
Yeah, we really are just.
I feel like that's what we say too every single time we get to one of these anime of the months.
Because it does happen so fast. And we were, for a little sneak peek behind the scenes, we were pretty ahead for anime of the month in terms of.
We were.
One, we had our decisions of what anime we were watching ahead of time. So if us or the Nerdy Misfits Gaming wanted to get ahead, they could.
Yeah.
And we even recorded our anime of the month episode for last month
ahead of time. Yeah,
but now it's like poof, we're like already done. It's crazy.
And I think too, last week's episode was such a unique thing too, and that took a lot of time too with the whole. We did our first official live episode, and then that became the weekly episode. So go check that out.
Yeah, Matt put a lot of work into the edit for that.
Yeah, there's still a couple bugs. You'll notice there's a couple echoey parts, but
if
it's a lot better than what it was.
If you're interested in checking out the actual live stream, we can send a link your guys' way, or you can check the Discord. The link's there as well. That'll be in our link tree down below. But yeah, let's dive into this month's anime month, which is Delicious in Dungeon or Dungeon Meshi. For those of you who are new around here, every month we pick an anime, we watch it, we give you our initial thoughts, maybe a couple. I wouldn't say it's quite a
spoilery.
I wouldn't say it's quite a full breakdown in terms of a video essay, but it's more of a raw reaction to the whole show. There will be spoilers ahead, things we liked, disliked, some of the characters we liked, etc. But yeah, we just pick one, we watch it. You'll get some thoughts from Nerdy Misfit Gaming as well. And yeah, it's just a
fun,
good time. If you've seen this anime, then obviously you stay tuned for that. If you haven't, I will start before we go into deep spoilers saying, if you like fantasy, you like Dungeons and Dragons, maybe you like Baldur's Gate.
Oh, about cooking?
Yeah, I think some interesting world building, cool monsters. I say check it out.
Give it a watch, definitely.
Without further ado, Matt, if you'll take us away on the stats and the synopsis
We're
of
looking
our anime.
at Dungeon Meshi, aka Delicious in Dungeon, first aired back in winter of 2024. 24 episodes done by Studio Trigger. The genre is basically what Connor said. It's adventure, it's comedy, it's fantasy, it's a little bit of gourmet. My anime list score is 8.6 based on 483,562. Of that number, 264,464 people have completed it. You are looking at, if you're in Canada, you're able to watch it on Netflix. And then the first season does cover the first 52 chapters of the manga. I went on a little deep dive to see how much was left and everything like that. But anyways, synopsis. Adventuring knight Leos Tudin leads a small party through a seamlessly endless dungeon, a subterranean maze full of dangerous monsters and precarious traps. Through the use of advanced magic, an explorer can sometimes be resurrected, allowing them to learn from past mistakes and give them transferring the dungeon another go. However, when a powerful dragon eats Fallon, Leos' spellcasting sister, she sends her brother and his companions back to the beginning to save them from permanent ends. Though strapped for cash and equipment, Leos resolves to fight his way through the dungeon and rescue Fallon before she can be digested by the dragon. Despite some of Leos' allies abandoning him, two remain by his side: an elfin mage, Marcelia Donato, and halfling locksmith Chilchuck Timms. Due to their lack of funds, the party faces the daunting prospect of starving before being able to complete their quest. However, they find salvation in Senshi, a dwarven warrior with a penchant for cooking and safely eating defeated monsters. With Senshi's culinary expertise, Leos and his companions struggle through the dungeon while learning about gourmet dining and each other along the way. I will say, honestly, now that I've watched it, this description does pretty good. It doesn't give away too much.
Well, yeah, it covers generally what's going on.
Yeah, I would say some descriptions in the past, I feel.
Yeah, and it kind of covers the first true story.
Yeah.
I guess we'll jump right into. So initial thoughts. I actually did not fully read the synopsis. I just obviously have heard a lot of hype around the series. We talked about it in our season, I think. So you said winter, so that would have been the winter season for 2024. We would have discussed it, and I think we both said we might check it out, but just never got to checking out, giving it the 3-episode try. If I did, I probably would have watched it then.
Yeah.
Just had a lot on the docket. But yeah, I really thought going in was going to be more of just like a really episodic show, more about focused on eating the monsters, less so on like moving through the dungeon. And I thought that was going to be like the gag, which was just, oh, what are we going to eat today? Which is kind of part of it.
Yeah, it's part of the story. But
I was not expecting it to have like proper setup, real character development, and like pretty substantial world building.
Yeah.
Especially told from just within the dungeon. So that was a bit of a shock. I also felt like overall the author did a great job of kind of capturing the essence of D&D or Baldur's Gate, whatever they're going for. That kind of fantasy RPG game feel was really captured. With the different party races and classes and all of them having their own personality.
Yeah.
And how they ended up there, because we kind of got that, how they all began adventuring, and also just their own personal belief system, how they react to other races. And it was just pretty extensive, I would say. More extensive than you thought going into something that was more focused around food. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, so like this is obviously recency biased because obviously we just finished this, but this is probably one of my favorite anime that I've seen recently. I quite enjoyed all the characters, the world surrounding them as we traveled with them through the dungeon. I can definitely see why this anime was up for Anime of the Year, and it was surprising because it did feel like it was at the beginning. It really feels like it's like, you know what? It's episodic. We'll get to the dragon when we get to the dragon. It's literally just about the journey along the way, basically. And then it was just like, boom, subtle lore drops. And then it just kept getting better and better. And we see like characters that were mentioned come back. And then we see like the ecosystem within this dungeon of
crazy.
Floor.
The attention to detail for
was
the ecosystem
insane. Like right down to what certain creatures eat, what they can't eat, the mimics, and like.
Well, you have to leave. You can't take everything or you're going to disrupt the ecosystem. Like it was like attention to detail was chef's kiss.
I was quite shocked, to be honest. Because like I said, like it did feel very like you said, it's just a dungeon party going through a campaign. Like, we're not going to...
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, you have to go save your sister. How are you going to do it?
Exactly. And then it was like, Yeah,
so I guess going into plot and characters, like Matt said, the first section of the plot is much more simple, which is we start by seeing the party fighting a dragon. They're losing. We see Laios' sister get snagged. Well, she kind of saves Laios because he's like, okay, first of all, I'm going to start by talking about the elephant in the room, which is Laios.
Yeah.
You either hate him
or you love him.
I'm kind of more on the hate side. I do find him to be a bit selfish or clueless, like in just
I would say clueless more than anything, but yeah.
Like you're going to save your sister. There is a bit of a time, and it just does not feel like there's any
rush to get there.
So he's not he like him or you don't, really. He's not one of those characters who are like, oh well, I mean, I can see. No, it's you're either on one side of the fence or the other. But he's kind of just AFK during the dragon fight, thinking about food, which causes him to just be standing still for the dragon to snag, and then his sister Fallon pushes him out of the way, saves him, saves the party, sends them back to the start. And they're like, we can still save her, because within the dungeon system, we learned that souls are kept in the dungeon. They don't leave the dungeon, so they can be brought back into the body. That'll come up later when we get there. But basically, death is a lot more fluid.
Yeah.
Bringing people back to life. And the first initial part of the plot is, let's work our way to go get Fallon back. And they have no food. They meet Senshi. They're like, oh, we can just eat
the
dungeon monsters.
Yeah.
And then, thankfully for them, conveniently for them, Senshi has cooked a good chunk of them to start with. Obviously, as they get further down, he's like, I've never cooked with this, but I'm sure I can figure it
we'll
out.
figure it out.
And the attention to detail, even on watching the steps of cooking, is fun to see. And obviously, most, if not all, the food is always referencing something within our real world.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. As they go through, they eventually do find Fallon a lot sooner than maybe you probably
Which is
expected.
wild. I have that in my notes, that the fact that, like, the twist that they find the dragon by episode 12, I think that's kind of what sold me a little bit, because I was like, okay, now
The
what?
only issue is that the story does become a little bit more fantasy generic, which is like, hey, now we need to find said evil person and defeat said evil person.
To fix this. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
As the D&D campaign
the story kind of
works,
develops
so.
where they find the dragon, they do save Fallon, then there's a twist with Fallon. She ends up going off, and the only way to truly save her is to find the Mad Mage of the dungeon and defeat them. And I put in my notes, or Takano Jitsu them.
Yeah.
Either one is definitely possible. I have a feeling with the way this story goes is they have a nice meal together.
I could see it just ending like, yeah, just come eat some food with us.
Like let's just have a meal and talk about our differences and figure things out.
The power of friendship. It's
And
fun.
food, you know, like I could definitely see it. I'm not saying that that's
Yeah.
great,
We have not read the manga.
Yeah.
We don't know what happens after season 1.
but I can definitely see that being potentially the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little bit more generic at that point where it's like find big bad, beat big bad. But there's some interesting twists along the way.
I mean, I do like the setup of the Mad Mage, like how we see them ahead of time and like how it does come back. Because we see them in the paintings and
See
like,
them in the living paintings, which is kind of, I guess, you could argue a sense of the Mad Mage is still original personality is kind of living within those of who they once were and how before they became the Mad Mage. So that's kind of cool, getting those hints before we really introduce them as.
we just thought it was
the
a
Mad
one-off
Mage.
character kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? So
So going into the main characters, we have Laios, who is your very generic, kind of the main character, human adventurer of this RPG. Then classic, we got our elf mage, which is Marcel.
no one ever goes for an elf mage. What do you mean?
Then we got Chilchuck, like Matt mentioned, who is our half-foot, halfling,
Hobbit,
hobbit situation.
whatever.
They clearly are some sort of rogue,
I think so.
but not the type that deals damage.
Yes.
Very focused on the stealth and the disarming of traps, unlocking stuff, got the thieves tools, but not really. I mean, if you've played D&D or you've played Baldur's Gate, you'll know that rogues definitely can dish out some crazy damage, but that is definitely not up Chilchuck's alley.
I was expecting to get a little bit more lore about Chilchuck's like background and like why he maybe doesn't necessarily.
I mean, he just probably
But-
thinks he's weak
Yeah.
or whatever. Then we get Senshi, who is our dwarf, and I put cook, but I guess he's also a fighter. Like he's
Yeah.
he's a dwarven warrior of some sort. And then Fallon, who is a mage. I put mage/priest
Yeah.
because she's a lot more like, I don't know. She has like what feels like almost negative personality comparative to the rest of the party.
Probably go for priest over mage,
Yeah.
but
Like she's very just like soft spoken, super nice, and doesn't have much going.
yeah.
And then later on we get introduced to Itsumi, who is a cat girl.
The cat girl that I thought was going to be a one-off character.
Yep, just joined the
And then
party.
she just joined and just stayed with them, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I liked her by the end. Thought she was interesting,
She's okay.
but not my favorite of the gang, but not my least
As
favorite
of
either.
right now, I don't feel like she's added much or
No.
done anything like really impacted the group that much. So we'll see if the dynamic or as we get maybe some more of her backstory, if things change. But yeah, that's kind of our main one. Throughout the story, we do see reoccurring other adventure parties. We see some past members of the main cast's original party, adventuring party. And they all end up playing certain roles within the story, but I didn't write them down because they kind of come and they go.
Yeah.
I guess for my first thing, I'll ask you, Matt, is of the main cast, who did you enjoy the most?
Oh, Senshi.
Senshi was your favorite?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of like that sweet, like you can't hate him.
Yeah, you just can't. Anything that he does, you're like, he's probably got a reason for that. And you're like, that's just. you kind of feel bad for him at one
At
point.
some point, I mean, his backstory.
His
you're like,
backstory comes out of left field, I swear.
a lot more
but-
depressing than you
Yeah.
would have thought.
Least favorite. If we're including just the core 4, not including Fallon or the cat girl, probably Chilchuck. I don't know.
That's understandable. I feel like Chilchuck, a lot of the time, he's just kind of adding a like negative
Yeah. Like, dude,
undertone to
come
everything.
on, man.
I think my favorite is probably Marcel.
That's a good. Yeah.
I think a lot of her reactions are quite genuine and like kind of feel more grounded to what I think a lot of. It's more that everyone else is so weird that they're just like, so like, yeah, let's just eat this. She's more like the grounded. This is how most people probably would react to eating, and we see that later on as we see other parties, and they're like, oh yeah, we've just been eating monsters, and they're all like,
What do you mean?
I do love her overreactions to a lot of it, and her, she does end up obviously eating the food, but
Yeah.
I love how
Hesitant.
every time she's hesitant for everything they eat.
Yeah.
Even when she does end up liking it. The other thing I really like about Marcel is she really seems to actually have the we need to save Fallon. Like she's like,
yeah,
she's
this
like,
is the goal
this
at
is the
hand,
goal.
guys.
This is what we need to do. We're trying to do this. Like
she's main quest. Everyone else is like side quest.
She cares more about Fallon than her own
Her
brother.
Yeah.
And the lengths she's willing to go to save her are extreme compared to anyone else. Obviously, as we get there, we see her use. She cares for Fallon so much that she's willing to use dark magic to get her back,
Which was also wild.
Yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, I think Marcel's definitely my favorite. I'm on the edge. I think it's either Laios or Chilchuck.
Yeah.
Different reasons, obviously. I feel like Chilchuck's a lot of the time, like his dialogue being so negative or just like bringing other people down. It just not like helpful at all. But obviously, that's part of maybe his character personality.
Mhm.
And then Laios is just like what feels like so useless. He hides things from the group. He's just not focused on what he needs to be focused on.
Yeah.
He truly does just care more about monsters. Not even eating monsters, just monsters. Like his fascination with monsters is just greater than his care for any humans. And you do see his backstory. You can understand where that comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Him and his sister being more like shunned and always the outsiders, if you will. So you kind of get why he's like, I don't care about, like, humans never cared about me. Why would I care about them? But yeah, it's more like his seriousness towards certain situations where, and this could be more so related to the writing as well, where there's just tonal shifts. Like it's like a yo-yo sometimes where one scene it's really heavy on the gag or the joke. And like we've talked about this when it comes to like Mashal and stuff, whenever it comes to a comedy, jokes are going to hit or they're going to miss.
Yeah.
It's just the way of comedy.
Exactly.
Some people are going to find stuff funny. Some people are going to be like, no, that didn't
hit. Sorry.
Didn't hit.
Move on.
And that's the problem with Laios. I feel like sometimes his humor, you're just like, and then it feels like not even 2 minutes later, it's like a super serious situation.
Yeah.
I do feel like as we get more into the depths of the show, I do find that tonal shift was not done as cleanly as it probably could have been. I do think maybe focus, if something's more humor filled, focus on that. And then maybe the next episode have a lot more serious tone, because the jumping back and forth just was not the best in my opinion.
That makes sense.
Anything else you have to add for the characters?
Not only for the characters, I think I'd say I think throughout the story we find out like information about the characters, which kind of intrigues them more.
And a lot of the backstories we end up getting also help develop the world, because since this party's made up of multiple races, as we get introduced to their backstory, we learn more about the elves, we learn more about
the dwarves,
and we learn a little bit about the half-foots. We learn also that as we get introduced to other races, we learn that maybe they don't agree with certain core beliefs of that race.
Yeah.
Which is very complex for a story that's only being told within a dungeon.
Yeah.
I guess if you want to backstep, you could say it's the island in which the dungeon is on, but we hardly even really see outside the dungeon.
Yeah, we really don't. Moving on to animation and character design, I think the core party members all looked unique, as a dungeon party should. Each character had features to show their own race and their abilities. I think Trigger cooked with the animation within the world and the food, of course. I think the food was great.
The animation was obviously stellar. I feel like going in, that's the expectation you have from Trigger.
Yeah.
I have down like they're all it makes all the scenes enjoyable. The flow is really great. No space yet. You never know. It's Trigger. Could happen. Character designs, I said, were not exactly mind blowing. Like,
Fair.
sure, okay, yeah, you're not wrong. Where an elf looked like an elf, but also did it look greatly unique for an elf?
That's fair.
No. Did Laios look mind-blowingly different for a human? No,
just
he was
generic.
literally some blonde dude. Dwarf was a dwarf.
Yeah.
I don't think the character design is absolutely
10 out of 10.
mind-blowing
Yeah.
in terms of creativity, but they fit the roles in which they were when it came to clothing. Obviously, with our classic mage for elf, we had a nice woven wooden staff. Like, things fit, but they weren't out of the box.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's good. Sometimes you just want things to look the way that they should, and you're like, okay, I understand that this is mage because I can see that they're an elf
Yeah.
and they're holding a staff.
I think they did well with that, like you said. I will say, like, all supporting characters also had their own design. Like, each party had their own uniqueness to them,
Yep.
which arguably
We had
some
different
of the,
skin tones. We had
Yeah.
different races. We had more races outside of just what our
the four.
four were.
Yeah.
Which was nice to see. Just really nailed that fantasy element.
It
in
really
terms-
did.
It really grabbed like I said, like if you like Baldur's Gate D&D, this anime really
It's right up your alley.
grabbed a lot
truthfully.
of elements from
Yeah.
those tabletop RPG styles for sure. And it's interesting because obviously the writer is Japanese.
Yep.
And clearly they took a lot from Western fantasy.
Inspiration, yeah.
So it's really fun to see. Like we mentioned, we know that we do have a large tabletop RPG presence for our fans. So they should definitely check it out if not.
If you haven't seen it already.
Going into music and the OST, both openings were pretty solid. I favor the first opening more because I'm a huge fan of Bump of Chicken. Overall, the OST, very fitting. Really great at creating the atmosphere and matching tone
Yep.
of the situations at hand. It also assisted a lot in certain characters' feelings, especially in situations where the characters themselves couldn't verbalize what they were feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like we could have an understanding of how a character was feeling in a certain situation. Like if it was more, there was higher pace and you're like, okay, this is this is an important moment. There's a lot of immediate danger. There's a lot of immediate
Yeah.
threat. So like it was higher paced. Instrument choice, perfect for the aesthetic of the dungeon. We got a lot of like fiddle and, not really great with all the older instruments, but a lot of string instruments that
Yeah.
kind of fit the
Very
that
folk.
fantasy tone,
Yeah.
that folk feel. Really well done on the music end for sure.
Parents had the same thing. I mean, the OSTs were very dungeon crawlery. Like it felt like it was very D&D ambient.
Yeah,
Like it worked really well, and it was cool because it wasn't just like one particular type of D&D ambient. I guess like when they're in like the underground city and stuff, like that music is very different than when they're fighting the dragon, which is very different when they're sitting there cooking.
yep,
Like all of the music was really well done. Same for me. Like both openings and ending themes were great, but the Bump of Chicken, like you kind of know when Bump of Chicken
yeah. They cook.
they cook every time.
They cook really well,
Um,
and the intro part for the song too is perfect for
Yeah.
the anime.
And the visuals too. I think visuals obviously sometimes play with the opening and the like the intros and outros, but I think
sure.
the visuals were great too, and I think it kind of bumped me up a little bit. I think I listened to it every episode.
Yeah, I agree.
'Cause there is some intros, I'll be honest, that like you listen to it for the first couple episodes and you're like, this intro just isn't for me.
For me, it's like I often feel that way the first opening, like first time I hear an opening,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm like, okay, I have to give it two more
Yeah, 2 to
more
3
eps
episodes, and
and
then
see how I'm feeling. Because sometimes it grows on you real quick, and you're like,
Yeah.
you know what? Nah, I dig it.
other times you're like,
And other times you're like,
I can
all right,
skip
I gave it a
this.
try.
Yeah, I tried to like it.
all right.
Yeah.
Before jumping into our positives, negatives, and our final wrap up, we're gonna send it on over to Nerdy Misfit Gaming and get their thoughts on Delicious in Dungeon.
Hello, everyone. This is Troy from the Nerdy Misfits Gaming with my review of Delicious in Dungeon. I would say that this was an interesting one. It is an anime that you can kind of throw on in the background and do kind of like a relaxed watch, like a chill watch. It's not an anime where the story's like overall complex. It was pretty easy to follow. It's pretty free kind of forming story where it's not like a direct. It's you're just kind of going through the journey with them. The art style and animation, I would say, it's all right. It's nothing fancy, but it's pretty good. It is very, after kind of watching more things, it is very trigger animation, where it's nothing fancy, but the colors fit. The animation slides are good, and everything just kind of flowed nicely together. The music and sound effects I thought also were pretty good. Again, nothing outstanding, nothing absolutely amazing, but it wasn't like garbage either. It was solid. If anyone has played the video game, any real video game, Monster Hunter, in that game, before you kind of do little hunts for monsters, you create a meal. And depending on how that meal was made would depend on which bonus stats you would get. And after every time you finished that meal, there was like a little sound effects jingle thing that played. And in Delicious Dungeon, there's something kind of very similar where every time they would make a meal or prepare a meal, they would have a little jingle that would played. And every time I heard that, it just reminded me of Monster Hunter. So I don't know if anyone else kind of has that similar connection per se. I did feel like this anime did comedy pretty well. There's some funny jokes that kept everything kind of entertaining, kind of made you chuckle a little bit. I don't feel like they overdid it either. So again, that just helped with the free flowing of the story. Where again, I think it's pretty generic, but still pretty good. The things I probably didn't like, there was nothing that really outstood that I didn't dislike for me. I would say that probably I do wish there was more to the story a bit. Not that the story's bad, like the whole story is them kind of, you're traveling with them through the dungeons. I just wish there was a little bit more to it than this free kind of, again, that free flowing where it may not be for everyone. Maybe in season 2 that there'll be a little bit more to that. I would say I'd probably give it a 7.5 out of 10, where again, it's not like it's bad, it's good, but it's not amazing either. It's it doesn't feel like anything was really being pushed or forced. They weren't pushing any sort of plots to the side. It's very silly, just really easy to watch. And if that kind of I would at least have people give it a try. Again, you may not enjoy that full kind of free flow, but I did like it. So thanks.
All right. Thank you, Nerdy Misfit Gaming, for sharing your thoughts on Delicious Dungeon.
And you can check them out on the Nerdy Misfit Gaming YouTube channel. Stream every Tuesday. Potentially some more streams coming out. You never know. Maybe see Matt and I. You never know. But yeah, as of right now, streams every Tuesday.
Exactly. And moving on to the positives of why this show was really good and enjoyable. For me, I think the flow of the story and how they kept the story going forward was really good. And what felt like an episodic story turned into a story of caring for these characters and almost wanting them to succeed. And throughout the show, they really make you interested in the past of these characters. And it's interesting too because like there's obviously questions. I have a list of questions that why was the dwarf living in the dungeon? Like why was he already there?
Then they get answered.
Then we get answered.
Yeah.
It's what happened to the other party members that just kind of dipped.
Then we get the answer.
Then we get the answers. It's why does the elf know some dark magic? Then we get them answers.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's the flow of the story, but you're getting little bits of history of these characters, similar to when you're doing a D&D party. You don't flat out tell your entire origin of your
everything.
character.
Yeah.
You get
people have to figure it out as
sprinkles.
you're going.
Exactly. character designs were good, and the story was good. Probably my favorite episode, well, half episode, because it was kind of episodic, obviously, is probably the Nightmare episode.
Yeah, the Nightmare episode was cool.
Because that really put into perspective like one of the characters that we got like a little bit of origin when it came to the elf mage. Can't remember her name. I don't know why, but Marcel.
yeah.
And then like when we get to that thing, where she's in the dream sequence and she's kind of having a nightmare and stuff, and then it's that line of like, oh, like she's scared of death and like how are we gonna get past this? And then it's the twist of like,
Well, it's not that she's scared of.
It's-
She's scared
exactly.
of others dying.
exactly.
Which is, I wonder if you're even more hyper focused on it because obviously you've also seen Freerun recently.
Yeah, that
which
is also
that is
a
huge
factor.
theme within that story of
Yeah,
Freerun's just like going on her life and doesn't even really recognize like how quick
life is
humans'
passing
lives
by.
or
Yeah.
other races' lives go by until they defeat the Demon King, and then she realizes like, oh, like they're already gone. Like it was so short for me,
Yeah, but so long for them.
and then obviously that's just an element of
Yeah.
Freerun's story
Which
that you.
Is another positive I had for this is a positive and negative, but I'll talk more about the negative. But one of the positives was there was a mini arc, I guess if you want to call it, where the main characters like switched races.
They just switch bodies basically.
They switch bodies basically, and they give you a little bit of more information of like the life expectancy of some characters, and like
Yeah, I gave it that, but that was a creative way of giving lore
that's what I mean. Yeah, like I
Like-
did enjoy that part.
because they're all trying to learn about.
Each
Oh,
other.
I'm a dwarf right now.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? What should I expect? And they kind of give. It's such a clever way of giving information without having to just flat out be like,
This is the information
for no
This is
reason, all of
what-
a sudden they're like, oh yeah, this is how long elves live. This
Yeah,
is
I
how
live
long-"
to be this. You know, it was a very creative way. But
I thought
do
that
have
was pretty
negatives
well handled
towards
by the
as
author
well,
for that.
but-
Good. And I think like that for one of my positives is world building as a whole. And there was a lot of creative uses of how to build the world
Yeah.
while inside of a dungeon. And that was one of them where, okay, I don't want to just for no reason have exposition about
How
this is
long dwarfs live and
live and
halflings.
this is what they do. And dwarves are strong, but they get tired quicker and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But they told it by having a story element cause it.
Exactly.
I thought that was, yeah, there were a lot of creative things. I don't want to super deep dive into all of the elements that made up good world building, but I will say, obviously, we have something like One Piece. I think this is the best example of we follow characters that go on a journey, similar to Lord of the Rings, etc.,
Yeah.
where they go across the world and we see the different races and different cultures
Ecosystems
and how things work by going on this adventure. But this managed to still get all of those big elements and learning about history, about ancient wars that have occurred and how certain races, why they dislike each other. They told all of this through through
dungeon
dungeoning,
crawler,
which
Yeah.
is quite impressive.
It is.
On top of obviously fleshing out their entire monster lineup for the dungeon and how the ecosystems work and the reasoning as to why we see more dangerous things the deeper you get, which
Yeah.
is due to the increase in mana within the air, like the
Even right down
density.
to the weather of certain dungeon layers and like
Yeah.
how the dungeon's layered and why this weather is under this weather and how this is connected to
Just-
2 floors ago and
Crazy positive is definitely the world building and the attention to detail when it came to the ecosystems. For me, Marcel, easily one of the best characters, as I mentioned before. She's a lot more realistic for her reactions to eating the monsters, even if she ends up doing it. She doesn't want to per se.
yeah.
She also seems to be a little bit more down to earth and reasonable as a character. Animation, obviously a positive. It was great. Like we just mentioned, world building. And I wrote down through generally beyond just learning about the general world, the detail into the monsters, like we discussed, the density of mana is even discussed. And just it kind of like follows a almost video game-esque RPG power scaling system as we go deeper.
Yeah.
And it all makes sense. It's all not saying things have to be linear because sometimes linear makes things boring, but it did find that it kind of followed a proper linear flow that just felt like it made sense as they were going through. Another big attention detail stuff like the living armor.
Yeah.
Being this group of mollusks that actually replicate human muscles to make the armor move and look like there's nothing in it. I thought that was like mind blowing, like creative for one of their monsters, because it just goes to show that from everything we've learned about living armor, it's just like a ghost or an ethereal thing taking over. Even the people within the world thought that. And then they learned. So it was definitely really creative. And then I also wrote down the just introducing of elements of the world through different cultures, how they interact with each other. And we do see like how initially some races just have a bias or some sort of feeling towards another race. Like that's all introduced through the story.
Just good storytelling. It wasn't nothing.
Yeah.
None of the points you said felt forced.
Yeah, exactly. There was never just like exposition for the sake of exposition or just explaining things because it needed to be explained before they introduced that element of the story. It was all kind of done more naturally through conversation or through scenarios that occurred, obviously on purpose to explain. But when it's done through the story, it feels better, more natural. It doesn't feel like you're just telling us something.
Exactly.
To tell us. Do you have any other positives to throw out there, Matt?
Overall, I think you got most of it. Yeah.
All right, I'll start us off with some negatives. Main thing is whenever you're dealing with a comedy, obviously the comedy is going to be hit or miss. So for most people, this could be a negative or it could be a positive. I wrote down that the main story itself is kind of fighting between two major components. It's trying to be both very funny, very lighthearted, but then in the flick of a switch, we have to turn into, oh yeah, this is a action fantasy drama kind of story. And I just feel like the flow of that was a lot of oil and water, where a good example is when we first see the Red Dragon defeat it.
Mm-hmm.
They're all pretty jokey about getting all Fallon's bones and putting them together and blah, 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 blah. Then Fallon comes back and they're all like really happy and joking with her. And then, but within that same episode, it goes from, oh, ha, ha, bones, blah, blah, and then to dark magic. And it's all dark and serious, tonal, like extreme tone shift.
All out of nowhere.
And then she's back and then they're like, ha, ha, joking with her. And then like another snap, boom,
Switch
the
again.
dark elf's there and like she's gone and they're all yelling at each other. I just feel like there could have been more of like at least if it's done through by ending an episode, then starting the episode by having it be a more serious toned episode, you're already in that feeling.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I find it's a lot easier to have a serious tone and have a couple gag moments than it is to, oh, there's a lot of gag moments. Oh, now we're super serious. Like, I feel like that is just, does not have the
Not
same
a good
flow.
way to do it, yeah.
So I would say that was definitely a negative from, obviously we've been glazing the writing and everything. So I feel like it's worth pointing out that it's not perfect.
No.
There are definitely some things that could be a lot better. And I do think that this also will cause some people for it to not be their cup of tea, because that could really take them out of it by having this up and down tonal change. It's just the way it is. I think if you can get by it, then it's fine. Like both of us obviously can look past that and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see people being like,
Not my cup of tea for
yeah,
that
it was
exact
too all
reason.
over the place for them. Yeah, so definitely just some poorly timed and pinballing for the tones. Laios as a character is definitely not for everyone. He comes off as like kind of clueless and spacey. He's supposed to be working towards saving his sister, but often he really just cares more about the monsters, eating the monsters, what something would taste like, or honestly just forgetting in general at all that he's even trying to save his sister.
Yeah.
I also wrote down that he might be one of the worst for the aggressive tone shifts, as sometimes he's very serious and then he's making jokes about food or just thinking about food, and it just makes him come off as kind of a dick.
Yeah.
I think the biggest example is one really nice moment with Laios is when Fallon gets revived, he hugs her. She's like covered in dragon's blood and he just hugs her, and you actually can see that he cares for her.
Yeah.
But then the moment she leaves and gets turned into the chicken dragon whatever
Yeah, the
situation,
weird
his
hippogriff.
reaction is like, no fair, like look at how cool you look at all of like how many different monsters are, and it's like, hello, like that's your sister.
Yeah, but dude.
Like, and that's like what I mean, like he's just like almost too not serious most of the time.
Yeah.
especially when it comes to such a major part of the story is about his sister. The only other human that's ever truly cared about him. So I don't know. He's definitely not my favorite. And then I just wrote down this is more just like general for humor. I think some of the humor or the way the story is told is just not for everyone. Personally, I enjoyed the world, the party element, and I can get past some of the weird bouncy ball elements of the humor and to serious, like the tonal shifts. I could get over those, but I could definitely see
people not.
Yeah, definitely getting taken out, and just some of the humor just being
Not for them.
Yeah, not for them, for sure.
Yeah. I will agree with the comedy and the shifts, like where it feels like it's so comedic one moment, and then like a minute two later, it's back to being serious.
The problem is it's in the same episode.
Yeah,
I think that's
it's in the same
issue.
conversation.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
Like it is like he makes jokes about food, and then it's like, okay, but what if this actually kills us? And you're like, okay,
yeah.
Very similar negatives to you. My other point is not necessarily negative, but more of just like a dislike for me. And it was kind of how long the arc, in quotations, of them like switching bodies. I felt like it was amusing for like an episode, and then it felt like that is probably the one thing that kind of dragged on.
It was only like 2 episodes though.
Like 2 or 3 episodes, but I think.
But like we mentioned, the element of it comes off as funny at first, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then some of them are enjoying it, then they start not enjoying it. But also, like we mentioned, the creativity of using that as a way to
expand lore for sure.
So I feel like I can get over. Yeah, maybe they were different races for longer than expected, but also maybe would it not feel just as bad if they were able to figure it out within the episode?
For sure.
So damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think they handled that element of the story really well. It was put in a good spot, and also wasn't just they weren't doing nothing. They actually had to do things in these bodies, which made it interesting. Kind of reminds me of. Did you feel the same way when Trafalgar Law did to the Straw Hats during Punk Hazard?
I can see what you mean. Yeah.
Because I also felt like, okay, I'm kind
of like it's.
I'm not as into
I get
the
it.
Straw Hats
It's
being
interesting.
different Straw Hats, but it was also fun.
Yeah.
When you look back, you're kind of like, you know what?
It wasn't terrible.
Maybe it was longer than I would have preferred, but it was fine. Just, it's. I mean, clearly you must have been having a hard time finding a negative if that's your negative.
That's what I mean. Like that's kind of like
you're nitpicking like a.
Again, it's more of just like a dislike of being like, it's whatevs. But enjoyment overall, I thought it was really good. I thought it was fun. It was interesting. I am excited for season 2 whenever it comes out. Is it a perfect story? No.
Yeah, that's what happened. I said, it was a fun ride. Was it perfect? No. But the world is interesting. I'm invested in the story, and I'm invested in some of the characters, not all the characters, but you do enjoy some of the characters. You want to see them again. So I would say definitely enjoyed the series overall. Doesn't hurt that it's pretty to look at and that the music is nice to listen to.
A bonus. Final thoughts, recommendation, and rating. I'd recommend this to someone who wants to get into anime. Story's pretty straightforward. Characters are interesting.
Yeah, if you're a fantasy buff,
if you're a fantasy, this is easy for you. If you're a D&D fan, any RPG, this I don't know. Story's good. Characters good. Story gets more interesting as the show goes on. I did rate it a 9 out of 10.
I would say 8 to 8.5 for me.
Okay.
It's like kind of flirting with. There's elements where I'm like, oh yeah, it's pushing its way up, and then there's some things where I'm like,
it's pushing it a little bit down.
So I'm kind of stuck on like that middle territory, the 8.5.
Yeah, I don't know if season 2 has a release date yet. I presume it does not.
I'm sure it'll be sooner than later, especially due to I know that there's a good chunk of the manga. Whether it's, I don't know if it's done, but I know that there's a lot of it.
Manga is done, yes.
So it's there. The story's there for them to tell. So I would expect with how popular it was that Trigger is on the case. Hopefully.
Case. Yeah, we don't have any information when it's coming out. But
I guess easy to see why it was nominated for Anime of the Year.
Exactly.
One of the anime nominated. That also goes to remind that next week, tune in as we will cover the Crunchyroll Award winners, and we'll discuss those. Speaking of which, next month, the month of June, the anime of the month will be The Apothecary Diaries, which is also was a nominee for Anime of the Year. Potentially could be nominated again next year for Anime of the Year, considering season 2 is actually airing right now. We will be watching season 1, which is 24 episodes, aired in fall of 2023. There was a 24 episode count, so that's why it got brought through 2023 into 2024.
I was like double checking. I was like, did I get that wrong? But no, that's right.
It's Studio Toho drama mystery, 8.87. Pretty good rating, some would say.
Slightly higher than season 2 by like 0.02. So,
yep. So the synopsis is Mao Mao, an apothecary's daughter, has been plucked from her peaceful life and sold to the lowest echelons of the imperial court. Now merely a maid, Mao Mao settles into her new mundane life and hides her extensive knowledge of medicine in order to avoid any unwanted attention. Not long after Mao Mao's arrival, the emperor's infant children inexplicably begin to experience grave symptoms, almost as if a curse has been cast. The curious Mao Mao easily solves the mystery, and to remain out of the limelight attempts to leave an anonymous tip. Unfortunately, the dashing and perceptive eunuch, Jinshi, sees through it and manages to single her out. In recognition of her talent, Mao Mao is promoted to lady-in-waiting for the emperor's favorite concubine, Gyokyo. As Mao Mao continues to remedy the numerous ailments afflicting the imperial court, her pharmaceutical expertise quickly proves indispensable.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep, so we're in for a unique ride, I'd say. Quite different than our usual anime of the month, I think, which is one reason why it's going to be fun, because it's a lot more just a drama, which I feel like we haven't actually watched too many of.
Yeah.
Especially not a drama that's not like just a high school.
Yeah, this is definitely
it's like, 'cause this is not like
slightly out of our usual.
So that'll be fun. This is actually a case of an anime that I have already seen. Greatly enjoy it. We'll be watching it due to its nomination.
Yes.
And interested to see perhaps what Troy thinks, considering we both know this is definitely
not in his wheelhouse.
not his usual cup of tea.
Exactly.
So,
but until then, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Make sure you join the Discord, like, comment, subscribe, the whole shebang. And we will see you next Wednesday.
next Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye.
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast. Don't forget to join the island by dropping a follow. Thank you, and see you next week.